Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're honing in on something really critical, especially if you're leading teams or, managing projects.
Yeah, body language and negotiations.
Exactly. We've got this great audio overview from Joe Murphy, speaker, author, leadership coach.
hmm
Think of this as like your inside track to understanding those subtle signals, the nonverbal stuff that can really, really shift things in a negotiation.
And Joe's perspective, it's so valuable, particularly for, leaders,
Yeah.
project managers. He focuses on stuff you can actually use.
Right. Actionable insights.
It's not just theory like, oh, that gesture means this.
Yeah.
It's about how these cues build trust, how they help you get better results. That's a real advantage.
Totally agree. So our mission here really is to pull out the most effective strategies from Joe's talk so you can start using them like right away. Level up your negotiation skills.
Okay, let's do it.
So let's get right into it. Joe kind of kicks off with a bit of humor, something about the PowerPoint.
Yeah, he does. It seems small, but that lighthearted start, it's actually pretty smart, isn't it?
How so?
Well, it's a bit self-deprecating, right? It immediately helps lower everyone's guard, creates a more relaxed vibe.
Makes sense.
Especially at the start of a negotiation, you want to build that rapport. And a little humor, even about tech issues, it can be a great icebreaker. Makes them seem more approachable.
Yeah, breaks the tension. He also mentioned talking to someone, Geraldine, and stressed enthusiasm.
Oh, yeah, enthusiasm in communication. Super important.
It really hammers home that how you say things matters just as much as what you say, right?
Totally. Enthusiasm is, well, it's infectious. When you talk with genuine energy, it shows you believe what you're saying, that you're invested.
And that's persuasive in a negotiation.
Incredibly persuasive. It can make the other side much more open to what you're proposing.
Okay, so Joe then gives a definition. Negotiation is a basic means of getting what you want from others.
Through back and forth communication designed to get agreement.
It's a straightforward starting point. Sets the scene.
It does. It's a fundamental idea. But what we're really digging into here are those layers under the words,
The nonverbal stuff.
the signals that often shout louder than the actual words and can really swing that agreement.
Which takes us straight into some interesting myth busting. First up, crossed arms. Everyone thinks it means closed off, defensive.
Right, the classic interpretation. But Joe throws a curveball. He says it can often be like a self-soothing thing.
A self-hug.
A self-hug. Interesting. Especially in public, maybe.
Exactly, when you might feel a bit exposed. So the big question is, how do you avoid jumping to the wrong conclusion?
Yeah, how do you tell the difference?
You've got to look for clusters, not just one gesture in isolation.
Context.
Right. Don't just think defensive. Ask yourself, what's the rest of their body doing? Are their facial muscles tense or relaxed? What's their tone of voice? If they seem pretty comfortable otherwise, crossed arms might just be that self-soothing thing.
So look for other signs before deciding. Definitely. Look for confirming signals of actual discomfort or disagreement.
Okay. Another myth. Covering the mouth always means lying.
Yeah, another one people jump on. Joe says, hold on.
What else could it mean?
Well, think about it. Someone might cover their mouth when they're thinking, processing information, maybe feeling a bit unsure.
Or just, like, suppressing a yawn.
Or suppressing a reaction. Yeah. Or it could just be a habit. Again, context is everything.
So not a reliable lie detector test.
Not on its own, no.
Yeah.
If they cover their mouth right after saying something and they break eye contact and they look uncomfortable, maybe. But just the gesture itself, not definitive.
Got it. Now, head tilting. Joe mentioned this signals engagement, interest. He even linked it back to, like, prehistoric hearing.
Yeah, kind of like how an animal perks up its ears.
Right. So how does that apply in a modern business meeting or a negotiation?
Well, think of it like this. A slight head tilt sends a subtle message. I'm listening. I'm considering what you're saying. It encourages the other person to keep talking, makes them feel heard.
Okay, that makes sense. Encourages openness.
Exactly. But contrast that with a slow, deliberate, backward lean or head movement.
What does that signal?
That often means skepticism, disagreement. It's like non-verbally saying, whoa, hold on a second, I'm not so sure about that.
Subtle but powerful. He also talked about signs of impatience. When someone clearly wants to jump in.
Ah, yes, the cues that someone's bursting to speak.
He had a quiz in his presentation, apparently, but what are the general things we should watch for?
You might see little shifts, like they lean forward a bit more, or small fidgety movements, tapping fingers, shifting their weight in the chair.
Okay.
They might also start making those little noises more often, like quicker than before. It signals they're ready for their turn.
Recognizing that helps manage the conversation flow.
Absolutely. You can then maybe pause, invite them in, make sure everyone feels heard, keeps things balanced.
Right. Okay, this one's fascinating. Comfort behaviors under stress, like subtly touching the chin, lips, nose, forehead. Why do we do that?
These are usually unconscious. Little self-soothing actions.
Like the crossed arms thing, but smaller.
Kinda, yeah. When we feel stressed or uncomfortable, these tiny touches can provide a bit of grounding, some tactile reassurance, like a mini fidget.
So if you see someone doing that,
It could be a subtle clue they're feeling some pressure, even if their words are totally calm, a little window into their internal state.
interesting. Wide eyes, Joe said it's not just surprise, it could be happiness too, linked to the limbic system in Joe Navarro's work.
Yeah, our emotional brain lighting up.
Yeah.
Context and the rest of the face are key here.
How do you tell the difference in a negotiation? Surprise versus happiness.
Okay, so wide eyes plus raised eyebrows usually equals surprise. But wide eyes with a genuine smile, the crinkles of the corners.
The Duchenne smile.
Exactly. That often signals real happiness or excitement. You might see it if you've just made an offer that really hits the mark for them.
Good cue to watch for. On the flip side, pupil contraction. Joe said it's just physiological, the opposite of dilation.
Right. It's mainly a response to light, things like that.
So probably not something to read too much into during a negotiation.
Generally, no. Pupil dilation might indicate interest, but contraction is less telling in this context. Better to focus your energy on other facial cues, posture, stuff like that.
Okay. Faster blinking. That was another one. Joe listed a few causes. Nerves, something in the eye, bright lights, stress.
Yeah, he gave that relatable example of blinking faster when you're trying to avoid someone you don't want to talk to.
Huh. Yeah, I think we've all been there. So in a negotiation, rapid blinking could mean.
Again, check the context. If the lights are fine, no obvious reason for irritation, then faster blinking during a tense moment could suggest anxiety or discomfort.
But look for other signs too.
Always. Is their voice shaky? Are they fidgeting more? Look for the pattern, the cluster of cues. Don't hang your hat on just one thing.
Makes sense. He also talked about partial covering gestures, like a kid pulling down a hat slightly. What's the message there?
It often signals some level of discomfort, maybe feeling like they did something wrong, even if it's small.
Like a subconscious attempt to hide.
Sort of, yeah. An incomplete shielding gesture. In an adult negotiation, you might see it as a quick hand-to-face or hand-to-neck movement, maybe after they've said something a bit controversial or that they're unsure about.
Another subtle one. Okay, one of the most practical points. Checking for understanding by watching nonverbal cues.
Yes, this is huge.
Joe suggests asking, did I make sense? Or something similar, and then pausing. Why is that pause so crucial?
Because that silence gives them space to process and space to react non-verbally before they even speak.
Ah, so you can watch their face, their posture.
Exactly. You might see a flicker of confusion, a nod of agreement, a slight frown cues they might not verbalize immediately. It makes communication truly two-way. You're actively reading their unspoken feedback.
That's really useful. Joe then offered a framework, categorizing facial communication into comfort and discomfort.
Yeah, a simple but effective way to think about it.
So what does comfort look like on the face?
Generally, relaxed muscles, maybe a genuine smile involving the eyes. Pupils might be slightly wider. Lips look full and relaxed. Chin tends to be more forward, kind of open.
And discomfort.
Can be subtle. Things like tightened lips, maybe a furrowed brow. The chin might pull back slightly. Pupils might constrict, though, like we said. That's harder to spot reliably.
He emphasized that even if we don't consciously register all those little discomfort cues, our brains often do.
That's right. Our subconscious is pretty good at picking up on this stuff, even if we can't quite put our finger on why we feel uneasy about something someone said.
So how can we get better at consciously noticing them? Train ourselves.
It really starts with deliberate practice. Make a point of watching people's faces in conversations, not just listening. Pay attention to those tiny shifts, even if you don't know the name for the expression.
Just observe more carefully.
Yeah. And watching recordings of yourself can be eye-opening, too. Seeing what signals you're sending. Over time, you just get more attuned to the patterns.
Okay. There was a question from Wendy about applying this in a conference room setting. Joe suggested turning slightly to the side, but keeping shoulders squared.
Right. It's a balance.
Yeah.
Turning slightly can feel less confrontational, more collaborative. You're not squaring off directly.
But the squared shoulders and upright posture maintain
Confidence, presence.
Yeah.
So you're approachable, but still projecting authority and engagement. It's a nice mix.
He also warned against looking down or hunching over, even if it's because you're nearsighted or, getting older.
Yeah, that's a big one. Because posture speaks volumes about your confidence, your energy levels.
What message does looking down send?
It can easily be read as lack of interest, low confidence, maybe even being untrustworthy or trying to hide something. Even if that's not the reason, that's the signal it can send.
So, consciously sit up straight, keep your head up.
It makes a huge difference in how you're perceived. Projects positivity and confidence.
Joe mentioned his Murphy's hierarchy, briefly philosophy, preparation, arena, etc., but focused on the arena for body language.
Right, the actual negotiation itself is a good reminder that body language is one tool, albeit a critical one, within the whole negotiation process.
It works alongside your prep, your strategy, your words.
Exactly. They all need to work together.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. Mindset. Joe really stressed how critical mindset is for success.
Hugely important. He suggested viewing negotiations not just as battles, but as chances to build relationships.
Especially long-term ones, like with clients. How does that relationship-focused mindset actually change your body language?
Well, if you genuinely see it as building something together, you're more likely to naturally adopt more open, collaborative body language, more eye contact, warmer expressions, inviting gestures. It sets a completely different tone.
Creates a more positive atmosphere.
Definitely. More trust, more willingness to work together.
But he did add a little note about transactional deals, like buying a car or a house. Maybe the relationship isn't the main goal there.
Right. In those cases, building some rapport is still good, but your body language might shift slightly. Maybe more focused on assertiveness, clarity about your limits.
Still respectful, but maybe firmer.
Exactly. More direct eye contact, perhaps. The goal is the specific outcome, not necessarily nurturing that long-term connection with the salesperson.
Got it. Joe also talked about mood. Being in a good mood, showing positive emotions. How does that help?
He said it fosters creativity, makes everyone more receptive to finding those win-win solutions.
Like a positive feedback loop. You feel good, they feel good, you find better solutions.
Pretty much. Positive vibes are contagious. A positive attitude shown through your nonverbals can create a more optimistic, collaborative space. People are just more willing to explore options.
I really like this concept he introduced, drop the rope.
Yes. That's a powerful one.
Letting go of the argument and instead focusing on helping them get what they want. Seems counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It does at first. But think about it. If you stop pulling on your end of the rope and walk around to their side, metaphorically speaking.
You shift the whole dynamic.
Exactly. By genuinely trying to understand their needs and showing you want to help them achieve their goals, you disarm them. You build trust.
It reframes it as collaborative problem solving.
Precisely. And that often opens the door to solutions you wouldn't have found if you were just locked in that tug of war.
And he was clear. It's not weakness. It actually builds respect.
Absolutely. Showing you can understand their perspective, that you're willing to help them, that demonstrates emotional intelligence, strength. It makes them more likely to respect you and work with you.
Of course, none of this works without good preparation. Joe really emphasized planning.
Crucial. Doesn't matter if it's a multi-million-dollar deal or, as he joked, negotiating over the bathroom. You need to prepare.
How does body language awareness fit into prep?
Well, you can think about the other party. What are their likely nonverbal habits? Any cultural things to know? And importantly, what signals do you want to project?
Visualizing it beforehand.
Yeah. Visualizing yourself being confident, open, respectful. It helps you be more mindful of your own body language when you're actually in the negotiation.
He mentioned a problem impact chart, too, as a prep tool.
Right. Understanding needs and desires, your H cards and theirs.
Yeah.
Solid prep like that frees up your mental energy during the actual negotiation.
So you can focus more on observing their cues.
Exactly. When you're confident about your own stuff, you're less stressed, more present, and better able to read the room, read the nonverbals.
Okay, here was a point he made cautiously. Observing someone's gaze might hint at extroversion or introversion.
Yeah, he was careful about that one. Where someone tends to look more inward or outward.
But the warning was...
Don't jump to conclusions. It's a subtle potential indicator at best. Linking gaze directly to personality traits is way too simplistic. So many things affect where we look.
And definitely don't assume it means they're only focused on their own needs.
Absolutely not. Avoid those kinds of assumptions based on one little cue. Look for broader patterns, always.
I liked his example of Jane Goodall for quiet confidence. Powerful presence isn't always loud.
Right. It can come from that sense of self-possession, being comfortable in your own skin.
How does that look non-verbally?
Often it's a relaxed but upright posture, steady eye contact, not aggressive, just steady and calm, deliberate movements. No wasted energy. It's an inner calm that projects outwards.
A recurring theme was checking for inconsistencies, body language not matching the words.
Yeah, incongruence, a mismatch.
What do you do when you spot that?
It's a flag. Doesn't automatically mean deception, but it signals something's off. Maybe they're unsure, maybe they're holding something back, maybe they disagree but don't want to say it.
So it's an invitation to probe.
Gently, yes. You could say something neutral like, I'm just sensing maybe a slight hesitation there. Is there anything else we should discuss on that point?
Open door for them.
Okay. He briefly mentioned looking the part, dressing appropriately.
Yeah, fairly obvious, but still important. It shows respect for the situation, for the other party. Plus, it can boost your own confidence. Just align with the context, the culture of the place.
Exactly. Match the level of formality.
And the genuine smile involving the eye muscles. The Duchenne smile again.
Can't overstate that one. It signals real warmth, builds rapport instantly. People can tell the difference subconsciously between a real smile and just a polite mouth stretch.
Open palms signaling trustworthiness. How does that work?
It's almost primal, isn't it? Open hands suggest nothing to hide, non-threatening. Showing your palms occasionally, naturally, can create a feeling of psychological safety, build trust.
Then there was mirroring. Joe suggested practicing it, especially with superiors or key people.
Yeah, subtly adopting some of their posture, their gestures.
When it's done well, it builds rapport.
It can, yeah. It creates a some kind of sense of we're alike, we're in sync. But the key is subtly. If it's obvious, it feels fake and creepy.
Right. Don't be a mimic.
Exactly. Gentle, natural mirroring.
He also touched on listening for different language styles, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. I see, I hear, I feel.
Right, understanding someone's preferred way of processing information.
How does that help in negotiation?
If you can tailor your language slightly to match theirs, use more visual words if they talk visually. For example, it can help your message land better. They process it more easily, feel more understood.
Interesting. Okay, another myth busted. The person talking the most has the most power.
Oh, yeah, definitely not always true.
What's the reality then?
Often, the real power lies in listening effectively, asking sharp questions, and speaking strategically. Quality over quantity.
So dominating the airtime isn't the goal.
Not at all. Sometimes the quietest person, the one observing carefully and speaking only when necessary, holds the most influence.
He described an exercise tracking communication flow by drawing arrows in a group setting.
Yeah, who's talking to whom?
How does that help understand negotiation dynamics?
It visually shows you who the key players are, who influences whom, potential subgroups, maybe who's being left out. It helps you target your communication more effectively and understand the underlying power structure.
Smart. Okay, a question came up from Leo about cultural differences in body language.
Yes, international negotiations. That adds a whole layer of complexity.
Joe highlighted the need for awareness. What are the main things to keep in mind?
Norms vary wildly. Eye contact, gestures, personal space, facial expressions, they can all mean different things. What's polite in one culture might be rude or aggressive in another.
So research is key.
Absolutely. Research the norms of your counterparts. Be mindful, observe carefully. When in doubt, err on the side of being more formal and less expressive initially. He mentioned a story about hand gestures being misunderstood.
Right, easy to make a mistake. Following that, someone asked about finding neutral gestures for international settings, like the UN.
And Joe basically said, it's really hard. There are very few universally neutral gestures.
His recommendation was to limit the number of negotiators.
Yeah, smaller teams mean less complexity, fewer chances for nonverbal misinterpretations across different cultural backgrounds. Easier to manage and adapt.
Makes sense. Joy asked about combining all these techniques, body language, strategy, etc. Joe's main point was
Sincerity.
Yeah?
Authenticity.
Yeah.
Trustworthiness.
Those are the foundation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If your body language aligns with a genuine intention to understand the other person and find a good solution, that's what makes everything effective. People sense authenticity. If you're just trying to manipulate with tricks, it often backfires.
True intent shines through.
Pretty much.
He shared a personal mental technique, putting a problem in a mental box to deal with later.
Yeah, a way to manage your mindset during the negotiation itself.
How does that help control your own nonverbal leakage, so to speak?
By compartmentalizing, you prevent that worry or frustration about issue X from spilling over and negatively coloring your body language while you're discussing issue Y. It helps you stay calm, present, and in control of the signals you're sending.
Neat trick. Finally, he mentions cell phones, echoing Joe Navarro's concerns about how they impact our ability to read and use body language.
Yeah, the constant distraction.
What's the core message for us there?
Simply be present. Put the phone away during important interactions, especially negotiations. If you're looking down at your screen, you're missing all those crucial nonverbal cues happening right in front of you.
You can't read the room if you're not looking at it.
Exactly. And you can't project presence if you're mentally somewhere else. He mentioned his own technique of setting specific phone times.
Yeah, batching it. And that advice about not grabbing the phone first thing in the morning, getting some fresh air instead.
Good general life advice, but also relevant to staying attuned to the real world, including nonverbal communication.
So, wrapping up this deep dive on Joe Murphy's insights, it's really clear, isn't it? Understanding body language is such a powerful lever.
Especially for leaders, project managers, anyone navigating those complex conversations daily.
It's a tool to build trust, understand people better, communicate more effectively, and ultimately get better outcomes.
Absolutely. Just becoming more aware, paying more attention to these unspoken signals, both yours and theirs, that's the first huge step.
So we really encourage you, listening now, start noticing. What are you communicating nonverbally? What are others telling you without words?
That awareness alone can make a big difference.
So here's a final thought to chew on. Reflecting on everything we discussed, what's one nonverbal cue, maybe one specific insight from Joe Murphy that really stands out to you? Something you want to be more mindful of, perhaps in your next team meeting, your next negotiation, even just a conversation later today? How might focusing on that one thing change the dynamic?
Thinking about that can definitely lead to some real shifts in how you approach things.
Because mastering these subtle signals, it truly can lead to more success, more positive results, professionally and personally. Thanks for taking this deep dive.